Hello everyone, my name is Chrissy Jameson and I'm a research coordinator with the Richard W. Riley College of Education and Leadership here at Walden University. I serve as the URR coordinator and also serve on a number of committees, doctoral study committees and dissertation committees, and part of doing that I started sort of just wondering about motivation and progress of online doctoral students. And that led me to being interested in conducting a study of my own in which I sort of more closely examined this idea of virtual mentoring and supporting online doctoral students with regards to encouraging their motivation and their continued progress, particularly on the dissertation and doctoral study. So just a little bit of background literature. Research has shown that feeling supported by the mentor, of course, is very important. Mentor sort of being used as the term for usually the chair for the dissertation or doctoral study committee. This is especially true when the student is in that dissertation or doctoral study phase of the program. And so I started just sort of wondering how does a chair or mentor really foster this motivation and help that student kind of continue to feel that intrinsic drive for motivation to continue making progress, particularly on that study, which research shows is really where students tend to, if they are going to quit, that tends to be when they quit. If they're not making progress, if they get frustrated, that tends to be when that happens. So the main research question that I started off with my study was this focus on motivation, and I chose self-determination theory by Deci and Ryan as the framework to sort of guide the study. So I focused on to what extent does autonomy, competence, and a relationship with their mentor promote doctoral studies students' motivation to continue making progress on their dissertation or their doctoral study. So once I had this idea and wanted to continue with it and gather some data, I reached out to a colleague of mine from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology, and that school as well has EDD online doctoral students. So we both sort of developed a plan of collecting some data. So we constructed a survey based on some already vetted and reliable surveys that were out there, using self-determination theory as the framework, and with some Likert scale type items, but also some open-ended items. I also asked if any participants would be willing to have a follow-on interview as well. So for myself at Institution A, monthly emails were sent through an online participant pool, and enrollees of that participant pool can just go on and take the survey if they're willing to do so, and if they meet the criteria, which was just I wanted them to be online doctoral students, preferably EDD students, so that we could keep them all the same. I did have them sort of opt into that. The first couple questions asked about if they were students versus faculty, or students and faculty, and what type of program they were in. So I'm, pretty confident that all the participants were online EDD doctoral students. Left the survey open for about 3 months and had almost 30 doctoral students participate in the survey. It was about 14 items long, and then I had one person who was willing to do a follow-on interview with me, which I conducted shortly thereafter. At Institution B, monthly emails were just sent directly to all the online EDD students there, requesting their participation in the survey. Also requesting if anyone would be willing for a follow-up interview. It was also open for 3 months, and 11 EDD doctoral students participated in the survey there and completed all the items, and there were no participants willing to be interviewed there. So after gathering all of these data and starting to analyze, we really focused on the self-determination theory constructs of autonomy, competence, and the relationship with this chair, and how that promotes the doctoral student's motivation to continue in the program, specifically on the dissertation or doctoral study. We found, not surprisingly, that the relationship is very important. Most participants rated it as at least somewhat important, if not very important, sort of regardless of where they were in the program. But it became very, very obvious early on, as we started our analysis of the results, that the students really belonged in a couple of different groups, and that depending on where they were in the program, that really determined how they responded to some of the questions. So although I have an overall look at the results, how I really kind of think about the results as I analyze them is in these different groups. So there's sort of an initial group that's still kind of taking coursework, maybe wrapping up their coursework and just starting their prospectus or their premise. Then there's the students that I call the midway students. So they're, maybe they're finished with their prospectus, maybe they're working on their proposal. And then there's these groups of students that are more what I would call the final phase. So they've collected their data, they're either analyzing their data or they already have their final document, at least in somewhat of a draft form. And those three different groups really seem to have different responses than each other. So it made sense to sort of group them in that way. It was interesting to me how really focusing on midway phase students really gave me a real variety in some of the responses. For a lot of the responses about motivation and, if they had ever thought about quitting, or if they had ever quit and come back in, things like that, this group seemed to be the group that had a lot of variation in their responses. So especially in this midway phase, students who didn't feel supported or didn't say that they had a very positive relationship with their chair tended to mention just how much more they've struggled than some of the other students who mentioned a more positive relationship with their chair, struggled to maintain their motivation to continue on, to make progress. This was particularly true if those participants tended to blame sort of what I would call external factors on their lack of progress. So they said things like they haven't received enough feedback from their chair, or their chair is not available when they would like this person to be, or things don't happen quickly enough. So sort of blaming things outside of themselves, external factors, what I would call an external locus of control. And those were not things that I expected as part of the study. I was really focused on, autonomy, competence, and relationships as part of my framework constructs. So this idea of this strong connection to this locus of control was not something that I expected, but was certainly interesting and carried through most of the results. All the students in the final phase of the dissertation or doctoral study process reported having a very positive relationship with their chair, which I thought was interesting and important to note. I don't think that means necessarily that they're great friends with them, but just that they've developed a positive relationship enough to be able to communicate effectively in order to have a strong working relationship with each other. Those who responded the chair did not make them feel very supported, but were in that final phase, stated internal reasons for completing. Because some of them said still, their chair didn't necessarily make them feel supported throughout the entire process, but they did have this positive relationship was very important. Would say things like, but I keep striving because I know I can do this, or I feel hopeful about my study, or I've always wanted to do this and I've invested this much time and I'm going to complete this. So they had more of an internal locus of control and really had taken on the ownership of owning the process and this determination that they were going to finish. Sort of under that, as sort of a subheading, is this idea of just in general feeling supported by the chair. That came out as very important as well. And a number of students wrote things like, my chair has continued to let me find my own direction while giving me constructive criticism. So again, not always super positive, and not that everything's great and they're that the student doesn't have to do any changes to the document, but just that they work well together and that there's an understanding between the chair and the student so that the student feels supported by the chair. Comments like, I deeply appreciate the help. I would be alone without them. So that sort of indicates this idea of being in it together as well, and sort of feeling like there's somebody else there with them supporting, they're not alone, and sort of out there trying to work on this. This idea of competence, I would like to, in a follow-on study, maybe go a little bit deeper into this area and ask a little bit about trying to get at competence of the students feeling like they are competent, and at what phase do they really feel like they have the competence to do this versus really feeling like their chair or mentor is competent to assist them until they themselves, the student, become more competent. I asked just a couple of questions about this on the survey about, did the student feel like their chair had the competence to help them, and then did they feel like they did? And it was interesting because a lot of students early on said that they felt like they had the competence to do that. And at the very end, they did as well. But in the middle, there was, again, a great deal of variety. So that indicates to me what might be happening is at the beginning, maybe there's somewhat of an inflated sense of competence that the students feel that they can do this, that they have the skills. And then once they sort of get a little further into the study, they realize, ooh, this is hard, harder than I thought. I'm needing more help, more support than I realized. And so they're not quite sure about their own competence. But again, I think that it would be important for further research to kind of tease apart then at what point is it crucial that the students feel that their chair or their mentor has the competence to assist them and is going to do that until such point as the student gains enough competence to do it on their own. So this finding was found only at Institution B, and this is where students expressed that they received a great deal of professional development from the chair and that was very important to them. So feeling like they were given opportunities to develop themselves professionally in terms of job-related skills, like working on their CV, attending job talks, going to professional webinar opportunities, scholarship activities such as publications and presentations, and really helped the students really feel like they can enhance their own levels of confidence about their ability to really be a member of the professional community once they graduate. That was only seen at Institution B, but I think is a good point about maybe some of the differences between the two institutions, but it did seem to be a very important point at the students at Institution B. So right now we are just working on kind of wrapping up these analysis, and we're hoping to publish our results and also, more importantly, continue our study and do at least a couple of follow-on studies that we feel are still needed to really get at some of the answers that we still have questions about. So we appreciate your time. I thank you for your time, and really looking forward to continuing to share my research.